Jodala untie. Jokobura untie. Wan waonge tugo malokacha.
It is a clear signal to us in Kenya that we need to do more about our exports. As we are all aware, our exports as a percentage of GDP came down from 28% to 10%. It is the reason why we are expanding our county industrial and aggregation centers. It is the reason why we will have new 5 export promotion zones in the Republic of Kenya, because exports as a percentage of GDP is even reflected in the trade between us and Singapore. There is scale, there is scope for us to export more, not just into Singapore, but to the rest of the world. But value addition and agro-processing will play a big part of our ability to be able to export. And that is why the bottom-up economic transformation agenda is focused on ensuring that we build the necessary capacity for us to do value addition and for us to engage in agro-processing so that our flowers, our coffee, our tea, our avocados can find their way into Singapore. And I want to thank Prime Minister Lee for agreeing that Singapore can be the gateway into the Southeast Asia and the whole of that region. So we are building the necessary blocks on our side, and we are building the necessary ecosystem together with Singapore to facilitate increase in trade.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Lee and President Ruto. This is Ke Yang from Lianhe Zaobao, Singapore. I have a question on the new areas of collaboration between the two countries, and in particular on climate action. With an MOU inked earlier on carbon credit. Would you like to comment how will the two countries actually move forward and on issues that face the mankind, both on bilateral and multilateral forums, and what is your vision of what can be achieved by the two countries? Thank you.
The MOU expresses our intention to collaborate and for Singapore to take advantage of carbon credits which Kenya would be able to provide. Carbon credits which are compliant with Article 6 of the Paris Agreement and which therefore can be used to fulfill our nationally determined contributions, NDCs. In other words, what we have committed to reduce our carbon footprint, some part of that we can fulfill through compliant carbon credits, and Kenya is producing such carbon credits. We need such carbon credits, and therefore we would like to work together on that. And the MOU expresses our intention to conclude an agreement to work together on that. Climate change is a very serious problem for the whole world. In Singapore, we see warmer weather. You may think it's just a blip, but actually it's a long-term trend, and it's going to accentuate. In Africa, in Kenya, we also see extremes of weather, extremes of drought and of floods. And it's existential because human beings, cattle, wildlife, all are threatened when the climate gets extreme. And therefore, countries have to work together in order to reduce global emissions of carbon, in order to reduce global warming and slow down the process of change, of climate change, so that countries and mankind have got time to adapt. And we want to work closely with Kenya and many other countries in order to do that.
I think precisely what Prime Minister Lee has said, that if there is one phenomena that is urgent and that poses an existential threat to humanity, it is climate change. And the MOU we have signed today speaks to some of the solutions that will inform our action towards solving global warming and every country meeting their nationally determined contributions. We are changing the conversation from one of finger pointing and blame game, and we are moving it away from who caused what. We are having a conversation about climate financing, about climate investment. How do we work together to ensure that we support Singapore to meet their nationally determined contribution, but in the process, they too help Kenya to manage the extreme situations that come with climate change in our region. So the carbon trading market is an answer to climate financing and climate investment. And that is the new paradigm, and that is the new space that Singapore and Kenya are leading. Just for the record, 25% of all carbon trading going on in Africa today happens in Kenya. So we are already a leader in the space of carbon trading. And the partnership that we're going to build with Singapore is not only going to speak to scaling up our carbon trading, because I already announced that our next biggest export from Kenya will be carbon credits. We are concluding the legislation around that particular aspect in the next month or so. I will be speaking to members of parliament to explain to them the opportunity that exists for our country in the space of carbon trading, so that we can work with countries like Singapore and others in the space of carbon credit and carbon trading. So that's the new language for the future, especially in the context of climate change.
President William Ruto and Prime Minister Lee, my name is Chemutai Goin from Citizen TV, and my question goes to Prime Minister Lee. Kenya and Singapore were almost at par many years ago. 60 years later, while strides have been made in Kenya in dealing with the issues of ignorance, health, but there's still work to be done. What was the magic bullet that Singapore instituted to make the strides it has made and lessons that Kenya can pick? Thank you.
I don't think there is a magic bullet. I think it depends on circumstances, on the history, as well as on the environment which you find yourselves in, and what you're able to mobilize from the population in response. We are a very small country. The land area is very small, 700 square kilometers. The population is very small. At the time we became independent, 1.5 million, now less than 6 million people, and surrounded by countries much bigger than us, and needing to make a living, do or die. No resources, no natural endowments, no inherited wealth. And that generation of people decided that they would make a go of it, and we, their children and grandchildren, are the beneficiaries who have tried to continue to make a success of it. And fortunately for us, our forefathers' efforts worked. and our economy took off. And Singapore has been able to earn a living for itself. I think every country has got a different path, every country has got different challenges, every country deals with them in its own way, and Singapore hopes to work with them, win-win, mutually beneficially, to help them to progress and to be part of one stable world where we can live in peace with one another and human beings can fulfill the human spirit.
I think Prime Minister Lee is being modest. I think they made many correct decisions, which as Kenyans we can benefit from learning. And they are less endowed than us. They have less much of a country than we do. They have a smaller market than we do. So we have most things better than them. But they are better than us because they made the right decisions. I think my invitation and your response, Prime Minister, coming to Kenya, just by coming alone is a testimony for us to read how a country so small, how a country with no endowments, how a country with no natural resources, how a country that was not rich at all and had no inheritance made a success of itself by making the right decisions. If there is one lesson we will learn from you as Kenyans, is to make the right decisions, however difficult they may be, because we can see in Singapore what right decisions can make of a country.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The Excellencies now proceed for a luncheon.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
The respective delegations will be guided shortly.